You're listening to Passing Time, a Detroit Lions podcast. We're one pride and all grit, with a passion for Detroit Lions football. Whether you're between meetings, between classes, sitting in traffic, or just relaxing at home, if you have time to pass, pass it with Passing Time. Detroit Lions Talk.
Okay, we're on the clock, and you're passing time with us, your go-to Detroit Lions podcast. I'm Rob.
And I'm Brian.
And we have a ton to unpack today. We did a quick after day one recap, and we're going to go through that today, talk a lot about the draft, talk about the Brad Holmes interview. We'll get into a little segment of Around the North, and then a bonus topic. What's the bonus topic today?
Why wouldn't it be Shedeur Sanders, right? Why everybody else is talking about him, why wouldn't we?
This is going to be fun. So this is you're with us for the next 30, 40 minutes, and we are going to get right into it. Having some time to unpack this, process the draft. I feel pretty good about it. I feel like we came out of this draft, not a superstar haul like the last couple of years, but a very solid haul. 2 starters, a couple projects that potentially turn into starters. What's your take, Brian?
Well, you think about what we're returning, right? I mean, the Lions from 2024 were a 15-2 team who were first in the NFC.
That's got a nice ring to it.
You know, hasn't it? Okay. And we're returning 20 of those 22 starters.
Okay, that's got a nice ring to it as well.
One of those 2 starters that we didn't return, we replaced with DJ Reed. So Carlton Davis left, went to New England. We brought in DJ Reed, who arguably could be better. So now we're looking at one position, right guard, Zeitler, who left us, went to Tennessee. And if we're looking at this draft, I think they definitely address that particular need, right? So this is one of those drafts that we always talk about Brad Holmes coming in and doing best player available, and we are going to stay away from needs. But I think he had a little focus on some needs while still addressing that best player available.
You know what? You stole my thoughts there. Yes. Brad Holmes, I think he's looking at this team thinking that they are so close. And if he can sprinkle some fairy dust on some key positions, obviously the trenches were the couple key positions today. He really thinks that we could have a shot in our window. You talked about our window a little bit earlier.
I heard a quote that says, this draft didn't necessarily make our window wider, but it kept it open for longer, right? So we have some depth now at some strengths. Like our offensive line is a strength, and we drafted to make that continue to be a strength. Our D-line, interior D-line is a strength, and we drafted in a way that will make that a strength for longer. I love this draft. I love what we did. Now, is it the sexiest draft? Is it the big edge that we were all hoping for? No. But it get down to the nitty gritty. That word grit definitely echoes throughout most of these guys.
Man, I'm glad we touched a lot on the grit index before this. Yeah. This draft was just screaming grit index.
Yep.
So we go into this next season. We'll get in the draft specifically, but we go into this next season without really a ton of question marks. If we get through the year relatively injury-free, Davenport's definitely going to get hurt because that's what he does. But sans a Davenport injury, this feels like we're in a pretty good spot.
I mean, you look at Hutch coming in healthy, having the productive early season last year. We forget that Hutch is a top 5, top 6 edge in the league. And there aren't many of those elite edge rushers. Brad talked about it in one of his pressers there's 32 teams, and there's maybe 5, 6 elite edge rushers, and we have one of them. And so we forget that we have one of them. He talks about how the fans are mad because we don't have 2 of them, right? But who has 2 of them? What other team has 2 of them? Now, Marcus Davenport, he is a solid player when he's healthy, right? We have depth that will help us be healthy across from Hutch. And not only that, but that interior D-line supports and helps emphasize those edges. Those guys are the ones that crush that can, collapse that pocket, and allow Hutch to get the production that he has.
So this is all assuming that Hutch comes back and he is the same Hutch. And we are making that big assumption. He's proven it in the past, but like, is this going to be day one, same Hutch, or does he work into that over the course of the beginning of the year?
I would feel like, based on what I'm seeing and the doctors that I follow and the doctors that we talk to, um, he's going to be ready by minicamp and OTAs and training camp, and I think he's going to be raring to go. I mean, he's salivating right now with the opportunity, because he knew what he had, how close he was to things like defensive player of the year, and it kind of got ripped away with him with a crack of the leg. So
Yes, yes. So let's get into it. 3 Georgia players drafted. A couple in the back end of that first round, but let's get. We talked a little bit about Tyleek on our instant pod reaction, but just a run stuffer. There's some comps out there, but we had a little time to digest this.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts there?
Initially, he wasn't necessarily on our board, but if you look at what he has done at Ohio State, one, he's a national champion, so he knows how to play in big games. He was asked to stuff runs. He was asked to be the best run stuffer on the field, and he became that. Right? He wasn't asked to be the best pass rusher, because they had other guys in order to do that, and they continued to cycle guys in. But he can do that. He reminds me of an Aleem McNeil, and maybe even a touch more polished coming out of college, right? So I'm not saying that he's better than Aleem McNeil now, but he, coming out of college, if they both came out of college at the same time, he has a little bit more of those attributes than Aleem did just to start with.
So Aleem's not going to start the year with the Lions on the big squad, but you're telling me November, December, we might have 2 Aleem McNeils on the field?
Sounds like a plan of success, right? I mean, can you imagine having 2 of those guys causing havoc in the backfield? And then you're unleashing Hutch off a side, or a Davenport off another side, or I think Derek Barnes is going to be a leading pass rusher as well. And they're paying him the money to do that, right? They're paying him the money to show production, to play a Sam linebacker / edge. There's going to be some cool things happening, and I think Shep has his work cut out for him. He's got some dudes that are going to really help produce that.
So he slimmed down to a cool 334 last I read. What were the grit numbers on him? Do you remember those off the top of your head?
So the tricky thing about the grit numbers of deep tackles is they're typically lower, right? So he was at like the 42 range, which is a little bit lower than we would have wanted. But when you talk about deep tackles, it's almost like the expectation that they're gritty. Okay. Right? So they don't get talked about nearly as much about how tough or gritty.
When you take on 2 blockers and do your job, there's not much else to talk about.
Exactly. Right? And so they're not a quarterback who their grit index is inflated. They're a D tackle who the expectation is you're gritty.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about, when you think about SEC prototypical offensive lineman, you think about the next pick in the second round, Tate Ratledge.
I think about mustaches and mullets, right? You think about this guy. He's a self-proclaimed dirtbag. He wants to get after it. He wants to get nasty. He is a monster of a man, and he is going to compete for a starting guard position. I mean, he primarily played right guard out of Georgia, but he did have some time at the tackles and the other guard, so he has some versatility. But I would see him, really challenging for a starting spot from day one.
Yeah, and so my comp here, this isn't going to get anybody real excited, but good Graham Glasgow, the good one, not the last year's version was the average Graham Glasgow, but the 2 years ago version that earned him some money. He seems a lot like that. Or if you want to go a little bit further back, a Larry Warford. Just a big, beefy, physical guy that you could put in the middle of.
I mean, a 6'6", 320-pound, like high RAS athlete. This guy isn't just like a bulldozer. I mean, he's going to dance a little bit, and he's going to be able to move and pull and do the things that we ask him to do, right? He's going to sit alongside a Penei Sewell or a Taylor Decker and really be able to anchor those that O-line. not only that, but he played a similar scheme at Georgia that the Lions play now. Like they run zone, they run gap scheme. That he knows that he has to set that pocket steady so that Jared Goff can step up into it, because we know Jared Goff likes to step up into those pockets. And so he is a perfect fit for what the Lions want to do with that O line. And it just extends that window. I mean, we talked about that. Not maybe that window doesn't get bigger, but it's going to stay open longer. So,
and offensive line is a position that you need to develop. You need to develop in the off season. You need to develop draft picks, because if you get to week 3, week 4, and you have some injuries there, you can't just go to other teams calling for their guard to plug into your system. It doesn't mesh well. It doesn't gel well, and the price might be pretty steep to pull one of those guys over.
and not only that, but you look at the roster that we had as a backup guard. I mean, and Sorsdale might not be the answer, right? And so not only did we get one in this draft, but I'm going to skip ahead quick and talk about Miles Frazier briefly. We got two, and we got two quality guys that are going to come in and compete with a Christian Mahogany, who we got a little bit of tape on last year that performed well.
I'm excited about it. You tempered me down last time. I'm pretty excited.
I'm excited too. Or let's not be too down on Graham Glasgow, because to my understanding, he played injured for majority of that season, and he played left side, which he might have been a little bit more uncomfortable with. So could we still see the 2023 Graham Glasgow? I think that's still in him.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have 4 guys that are now competing for those positions, not only that, but from my understanding, they're going to cross-train Miles Frazier, maybe even Ratledge for center. Frazier played basically every position on that offensive line for LSU. And so he is going to be that versatile backup support system. And from my understanding, he's already started training at center. So he's going to get the experience. He is going to start working at that position as well.
I mean, that's exciting. Just the chess pieces you can move around, the cohesiveness you develop in the preseason, going into the season. And you brought up an interesting point when we were talking earlier. Lions get a little extra time in the preseason this year.
Yeah, we get the Hall of Fame game. So we're going to go to Canton. We get a third preseason game, and we're not going to see any of our starters necessarily in that game. But what we could see is some of these rookies, some of these developmental guys. Manu should be playing tackle for the entire game, and we should be able to get a really good look and develop. I mean, he's not loving the fact that he's competing against his own guys every day in practice. So at least now we get him out there against somebody with a different colored jersey that he can go after and maul.
And the Lions are sexy, man. They're getting ratings now. So they're getting flexy in the NFL schedule a little bit, man. They're going to prime. They're on TV. They're getting the Hall of Fame game. Just years ago, we were the 1:00 game every week, and now
set your watch to it, right?
Yeah, let's go. We're prime time. So I love the Miles Frazier. I love another mauler there. I love a versatile guy. But to your point, you skipped over one. That is the most controversial pick in the Lions draft. I would call it. Take it from here.
Sure. I mean, so Isaac Tesla, right? Wide receiver out of Arkansas / Hillsdale. He is a homegrown Michigan guy, somebody close to the west side of Michigan.
We are recording this in Grand Rapids. So this guy, I mean, you could Frank hit a golf ball over to his house.
Hudsonville Unity Christian. So this guy played high school football, won a state championship over at Hudsonville Unity Christian as the quarterback, right? And they played wing T. So it's not like he was playing a spread offense at wide receiver, learning the position. He 6'3.5", probably maybe 6'4", 215 pounds, physical. He is his RAS score is top notch, right?
29th out of 3,816 since 1987. That's got to mean something.
The dude's an athlete, right? And he is just starting to tap the potential at wide receiver. So he went to Hillsdale for two years because his dad was a wide receiver at Hillsdale, and knocked it out of the park. He's like, this pond is too small for how big this fish is, right? So he transferred over to Arkansas, and I don't think they knew what they had. Not only that, but they went through 2 offensive coordinators. They went through 2 quarterbacks, which were mediocre, and they put him in a slot position at 6'4" because I think it was easier to get him open, right? So they were easier to scheme this guy to get open and make some plays.
There's probably a learning curve there too. Going
Sure.
from Hillsdale to the SEC, there was probably a learning curve. Maybe he got comfortable in the slot. They knew they had a limited time with the guy, and they got him comfortable there. And he put up decent numbers.
But I think he does still struggle with getting pressed off the line and try to get that easy release. So I think a training camp and having some pros be able to teach you, some coaches be able to teach you, and we got some great coaches at that wide receiver spot. Not only that, but guys like Tim Patrick, who I know you kind of compared
again
to.
You know, if you didn't like my last comparison to Graham Glasgow, the good Graham Glasgow, Tesla reminds me a lot of pre-double knee injury Tim Patrick. Similar size, back when he was explosive. I mean, the Broncos were counting on Tim Patrick to be a guy.
Yeah.
You know, the Lions version is just a reliable. He's still got great hands. He runs good routes, but he lacks a little bit of explosiveness. Isaac's got that explosiveness, great hands. I mean, we've been diving into the videos, him training with his dad, catching balls, jumping 3 backflips on a trampoline, upside down on the gym floor. I mean, this guy has rock solid hands. He's fast. He's physical.
And one of the things that Brad Hogan said that caught his eye was at the Senior Bowl that he was blocking, right? He was down the field. He was a pest to defenses, right? So he was going down and getting in those ways, you know, driving guys out of there, and he became, you know, he said, I have to watch this guy's film. Went and watched this guy's film, liked him even more. You know, and what's the quote that he said? He's like, he might not be the best wide receiver, but
he's our favorite wide receiver,
right? Wide
in this
receiver
draft class. His
favorite wide receiver out of everybody, right? Not the Tech McMillans, not the Burden or
Luther
Burdens, but Isaac Tesla. So he's a Lion. He's got high grit score. He's got a high RAS, and that all that stuff makes sense. And I saw a comparison between him and Nico Collins. So if you could add a Nico Collins to a JMO and an Amon-Ra and a Sam Laporta and a Jahmyr Gibbs and a David Montgomery, oh man, that's a recipe for success.
That sounds like a lot of Kool-Aid here. If that happens, that would be great. If we get an explosive Tim Patrick, I mean, that's just what the Lions need, though. And a guy that can play a little bit of special teams, block, get Gibbs open on the perimeter.
But he's a selfless dude. He's willing to do the dirty work. He gets the idea of you got to block before you get the rock. You know, so he understands that, and he's willing to put the work in. And I think, like, we don't even know what we have yet, right? We have just – we're going to be able to tap that potential, and really it's going to explode. I really am excited about it.
We've done our homework on white guy, wide receiver cliches, and I think you got a couple of them there.
Sure,
I love it.
Sure. Yeah. The tricky thing about him is we moved up quite a bit to get him, right? So we went from 102 to 70 to get a guy that a lot of you, I'm sure, are like, hey, we could have got him in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round and not given up 3 third rounds for it, right? And that's the tricky thing, right?
Just because you see Todd McShay's mock draft that has him going
right
wherever, it doesn't mean that's what the GMs are thinking.
Yeah, you also got to remember Mel Kiper was wrong about Shedeur Sanders too. I mean, you heard about that all the way
he
through
is
that draft.
Still bitter about that.
Got steam coming out of his ears still. Yes. Regardless, Isaac Tesla was Brad Holmes' guy. He woke up and said, I want this guy, and I don't care what I have to do to get him. I'm going to make sure that he's on the Lions.
A 2nd round grade, Brad's favorite wide receiver in the class. And they, in hindsight, you look at the 3rd round picks that they gave up, they're back end of the 3rd rounds next year. Compensation pick.
It's going to be the 32nd pick in the 3rd round next year, right? Because we're going to
and then the compensation
and
pick,
then
which is
the one after,
the 32nd
right?
pick.
So
you know, and it's a position of need. The Lions need some depth there. They need some excitement, some youth. I, for one, am very excited about that one. And back-to-back excitement here because somebody blew the radar off the grit index, the personal grit index. So Ahmed Hassanin.
Yeah. This dude.
First Egyptian-born player that made it to the NCAA, I think, and now
Dude, the
touched the
guy's.
NFL.
I mean, if you watch any of his videos, how can you not like this guy? He's bawling. He's proposing to his girlfriend. He's telling Dan Campbell, "I'm gonna die for you. I'm gonna die on the field for you." If you can't tell me that's a lion, I mean, who is at that point, right?
Yeah.
He is a dude that didn't know what football was. He didn't know what football was until he was 16 years old. Started playing high school football because his brother got him into it. He was a CrossFit, like one of the leading CrossFit dudes in Africa, and then knew some mixed martial arts. So he was talking about how he's grabbing guys with a face mask and putting them in chokeholds and trying to get them to wrestle them to the ground, and watching Aaron Donald and YouTube videos in order to refine his game. So that's what we're dealing with. But at Boise State, he goes D1 and is their leading sack producer. He's leading them in pressures. He's got 16 plus sacks for the year. This guy plays with his hair on fire.
And he's going to play for a coach that will bite your kneecap. It's
He
just a
might
Dan
bite
Campbell
back,
guy.
you know, at this point, right? So this is what we're talking about. I mean, if you saw him at the combine, he's pumping up the coach, trying to get him going, not necessarily pumping himself up. It was awesome.
So I mean, I hope he can make the roster.
Yep.
Very coachable. When you talk about potential, I mean, this is a lot of potential. We might be in, the second inning of his untapped potential. So if the Lions can keep him on the squad for a couple of years, this could be a guy down the road that could make a big impact.
And it's not like we reached for this guy. We got him in the 6th round. He's a 6'3", 274-pound crazy person that I think is going to at least compete, right? He's never going to lose a rep or give up on a rep. He's going to compete throughout the echo of the whistle, as you would hear, and he's just going to get after it. I mean, I really do. He might not be the best guy on the board here or in our draft class, but he's my favorite.
Maybe a mid to high ceiling, low floor, but that's the kind of people you want to take a swing at in the 6th round, right?
Who knows? Could it be a Max Crosby? That's right.
I like that.
Right?
I like that comparison a lot.
A guy that nobody really knew until he just worked his butt off to prove himself. So that's what I'm hoping for.
We're gushing here. Yeah. So let's go to another Georgia Bulldog drafted in the 7th round, 230 overall, Dan Jackson. You got some thoughts here?
Safety. This guy, to me, he is a physical presence at safety. He throws his body around. He wants to be the big hit. He at the Senior Bowl, all I heard was he is a guy that wants to separate himself by his physicality, right? So he might not necessarily have the best athletic scores. He might not necessarily be the fastest guy, but he is going to come down and hit you. He was a guy that's never got a scholarship at Georgia.
Not even a preferred walkout.
Yeah, just walked on, worked his tail off, and by this last year, he was a starter. So what I'm seeing is this guy's going to play a ton of special teams. Given that he makes this team, he's going to fly down. He's going to hit like crazy. He is going to play your kickoff, your kick return, your punt return. He's going to play all of those things, and he is going to do it with a selflessness, and that's where that's another one of those grit index Lions, right?
So it feels like we've been repeating ourselves a lot, right? Like, how much prep did we do for the podcast? No, we didn't have to do much prep. We had 4 bullet points. We can use them for every guy, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And there is a theme here. I mean, Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes get in the room. Apparently, it wasn't Brad Johnson that was pushing this because these guys are still taking these tough maulers.
And they're avoiding guys with question marks. They didn't push to get a James Pierce. They didn't push to get a Mike Green. They went and got guys that they knew are going to fit this roster. They're going to only add to it in all of these other intangible ways. Not necessarily with the height, weight, speed. Did you see Brad Holmes' sweatshirt with the HWS crossed out? Yeah. They want to get their guy. So he's another testament to
football
their
players.
guy.
Yeah,
football players. Guys that love football, that are willing to die on the field for Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and the Lions. So,
and let's round this out. 7th round, 244 overall, another Georgia Bulldog, Dominic Lovett.
Yep, a little guy, 5'11", 185, but he is fast, 4'4". He is led the Georgia Bulldogs in receptions and touchdowns this last year. So productive, right?
So you're saying Lad McConkey? Is that what we're getting here?
He might be the Khalif Raymond replacement,
Okay,
right? Khalif's turning 32.
I
So
was saying Lad in jest for the
yeah.
record. I've had some Kool-Aid, but not that much
Okay.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So we're hoping that this guy is able to be developed, maybe on the practice squad, maybe through special teams. I think this roster, like we talked about at the beginning, 20 of 22 starters coming back. There's only 53 guys going to be on the roster. Where is he going to fit in? And typically, they're going to keep 5, 6 wide receivers. And with Isaac Tesla, he might be an odd man out. But if we can get him on a practice squad, develop him for a year, get him to return kicks, get him to really, find those special team pieces or move into a Khalif Raymond role in the future, that could be a win.
Absolutely. That's a draft cap. Let us know what you think in the comments. Again, please follow, like, comment if you can. We're trying to get this thing off the ground. We talked already a lot about the Brad Holmes interview. We used that in a lot of tidbits when talking about the draft. Was there anything else from that interview? I found it interesting that he said, hey, day 2, we traded up twice. But we tried over 30 times to trade up. So it's not that easy, huh?
It's crazy. And I read something also that said they were trying in the first round, right? I think they were. How hard they tried, I don't know, but they were trying, right? And it takes 2 to make those trades.
It absolutely does. I mean, it reminds me of, my dad would always ask me in high school, why don't you have a girlfriend? Well, I had 2 girlfriends in high school, but I tried over 30 times to get a girl to go out with me.
He's still trying, right? Yeah, just to keep the one he's got upstairs.
Oh, man. So let's go around the north here, kind of getting into the second half of this. The Bears, I mean, if they can't continue their parade of offseason national champs, they have weaponized Caleb Williams. They have put pressure on him now because there's no excuses. They've also put pressure on their coaching staff because there are no excuses. You're stepping into a situation where they probably have some pretty high expectations now.
Well, so you look what they did in free agency, and they revamped their offensive line, and now going out and getting a Colson Loveland right at the beginning. What, pick 10?
Pick 10.
Then they go out and get a Luther Burden, who is another weapon to go along with a DJ Moore and Odunze and Caleb Williams. And you are now, I mean, you're a little scary, right? I mean, and you're going to be somebody who's going to compete in that division, a really good NFC North.
They talked about, and I don't know how much of this is true or not, but there was a lot of phones ringing to move up to get Colston Loveland. From like the fodder here, he was like the number one guy. The phones were buzzing. Teams were trying to move up and take Colston. And then you got Luther Burden. And then you got Ben coming out and saying basically like, hey, if you don't block, you are not going to be playing. And they were directing that to a guy that's got a guaranteed long-term contract.
Right.
And he may be the odd man out, and that man is DJ Moore. I mean, he was kind of the face of the big trade. But you got Rome, you got Luther, you got Colston. I mean, the ball can only go so many ways.
But you look at what he's trying to emulate, and that's what we had, right? As Alliance, we had a lot of guys who were selfish in their roles that were willing to work for other people, and he's trying to build that in Chicago. So.
Would you trade your Detroit Lions wide receiver tight end room for the Chicago Bears wide receiver tight end room right now?
Not in a second.
Okay,
no, not at all.
You got the Kool-Aid.
I'm a slappy. I'm wearing the jersey for a reason.
I love it. So hey, we'll go to the I thought the Packers did a great job hosting the draft. It wasn't Detroit. But nobody will be Detroit, and that's going to be the standard.
Yep.
And that's no Kool-Aid. That's just the straight up truth. You got to handle that. Did a good job. What I found interesting with the Packers is it seems like they got some needs at cornerback, and they passed on a couple cornerbacks on a couple times, and they did something they haven't done since what was the last year?
28 years. Is that what they said? It was like they got a wide receiver, Matthew Golden, somebody that the Lions I know were interested in. They brought in speedy wide receiver, 4'2", 40, that they were in need of. I mean, they're in need of a guy, right, at wide receiver. Somebody that's going to be the alpha in that room, that's going to be able to be a game changer. And they're hoping that Matthew Golden's that guy.
So I don't have any Green Bay Packers Kool-Aid, but it just seems like Matthew Golden is Romeo Dobbs. He's the same package of a lot of guys that they already have. Dontavian Wicks.
Yep.
He just nothing really stands out. I mean, he's a good route runner. He's got a lot of speed. He didn't dominate for a lot of years. He had a couple solid years. So I mean, for Lions' sake, I hope he doesn't pan out. I hope he's just another one of those guys.
But you look at like their strategy too. They stuck in their picks. They picked at their picks. They didn't move up. They didn't move down. They just, here's the guy that we're going to take, and we're just going to move forward.
The most boring franchise of all time. But man, you can be boring when you have 3 quarterbacks over the last 30 years, and 2 out of 3 are going to be in the Hall of Fame, and 1 has a chance to make the Hall of Fame. It's easy when you have just the stable franchise. The Vikings. Vikings winning the draft, I think, with 4 picks, ended with 5 picks.
Moved around a little bit.
Nothing sexy about their draft.
They got their first round pick, Donovan Jackson. I liked him a lot. You know, I thought he could have been a Lion because of his versatility at offensive line. And so if he would have fallen to us, would we have taken him over Tyreek Williams? I can't tell you that for sure, but I like Donovan Jackson a lot. I think that, you know, in looking at him as a starter for them, it's going to help them out a lot. So, but there wasn't that much flash there. There wasn't that much sexiness to their picks as well. It was just, we have these 5 picks, so we're going to go into it with, and we're going to try to find the guys that fit our roster, right? I think they're in a fairly similar boat as the Lions, and coming off a 14-3 season and having some really good, a really pretty good roster. And finding the guys that fit that might be difficult. So.
I mean, it seems like they have a lot of faith in JJ, and I know there's a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers is just hanging out, waiting for the Vikings to call him and be like, "Hey, you know, we might need you for 1 year." I don't know if that's going to happen, but they are in a good spot, especially if JJ can even replicate, 85% of what Darnold did last year.
Sure, and I don't think they're going to call Aaron Rodgers. I think that Aaron's hoping they do. For that.
I hope they do for the soap opera of it.
For me, it would be great because I think Aaron Rodgers is washed up and should be moving on. But
it would be the whole Brett Favre,
just
Green Bay, New York Jets,
over the
Vikings. Yeah, that's comical. So let's wrap it up here. Final topic. We'll be serious on the front end of this. Shedeur Sanders, and then we're gonna pile on like everybody else has. I was listening to the Joel Klatt show. Great follow. Go follow Joel Klatt. Listen to his stuff. Level-headed guy. But
after you follow us, for sure, right?
You need to click that button. And if you're still watching this, click that button now. Pause it. Click that button. But Joel Klatt talked about how in the draft, teams are looking. They're viewing quarterbacks in 2 different lights, and they're looking at tape and they're viewing you. Are you a starting quarterback in the NFL? And they view you this way. Or are you going to be a backup quarterback in the NFL? Potentially maybe a starter down the road, but a surefire backup. And they're going to give you a whole different set of criteria. And this made a lot of sense to me. Looking at this tape, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of improvising, a lot of holding the ball, taking a lot of sacks. The tape said this is a backup quarterback. Maybe down the road he could be a starting quarterback. And Joel said, the criteria for that is, a really hardworking, humble, non-headline type guy. And I don't think that's what you get with Shedeur.
I don't think you got that with Shedeur. You hear all of these stories about how terrible his interviews were, how he didn't take it seriously. The conversations, you heard about this conversation with Cam Ward, he's talking to Cam Ward. He's like, "Hey, what else you got going on besides football?" And he's like, Cam Ward's saying, "I don't have anything else going on. I'm playing football."
Yeah.
And Shedeur was talking about, "Well, I got a record coming out." And he's like, "Well, I play football."
And you don't have any hobbies?
No, I play football, right?
Football.
And so that could be the separation between the number 1 overall pick and somebody that drops to the 5th round, right? Or a starting caliber quarterback and a backup quarterback for now. Now, did he fall into a spot that's possibly best suited for him to compete for a starting spot?
Potentially.
Yeah, right. Potentially. I mean, you got Joe Flacco and
Dylan Gabriel, yeah.
Dylan Gabriel is
Which I
there,
think actually is a very similar player, but without
right?
the baggage, right? And so if you're a very similar guy and you got a lot of baggage and one guy doesn't, I mean, you're probably sticking with a guy that doesn't have a lot of baggage.
Listen, their room is full, and so they're gonna have to weed some things out. But I can't leave this conversation with Shedeur Sanders without asking you: did you see the conversation from the frat boy, Ole Miss frat boy, Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator, saying you're gonna have to wait just a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, the 21-year-old is a legend in his friend circles, but man, he might have an awkward Thanksgiving dinner next time he goes home with his dad.
Oh man!
And the fact that his dad, there's been no reprimand, to my knowledge, of the franchise. The defensive coordinator is still the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But you know what? As much as we want to pile on the kid, like he's a young, immature guy. His frontal cortex is, 75% developed. Nobody deserves to get their hopes up like that with his $200,000 draft room with legendary all over the place and getting his hopes up, and then maybe he'll make a rap song about it.
Yeah, that's fine. But to his credit, to Shedur's credit, from my understanding, he called the kid again. The kid apologized. Called Shedeur, the frat boy called, and
the frat boy,
and apologized, and Shedeur handled it really well. And then when he did end up getting drafted in the 5th round, he celebrated. He was excited. He and his brother made light of firing his dad as their
agent.
Agent.
And Shiloh did fire his dad, undrafted free agent.
But it just seems like he responded well. Now, is he going to be a successful quarterback in the NFL? That will be determined later, right?
I mean, and do you want that guy on your franchise? I mean, I'd rather have a hooker on my franchise than a Shedeur Sanders right now, right? I mean, what about you?
You always got to love a hooker, right? Just got to keep a hooker around.
Hey, thanks for tuning in with us. Please, again, last time I'll say it, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you want to talk about. Mailbag will be open. I'm Rob.
I'm Brian.
Thanks for tuning in. Passing time.